Big week for the Providence schools.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
The chairman of the Providence School Board is here, and that's a good thing because the school board doesn't get a lot of play in this conversation going on between the mayor of the city of Providence, the governor of the state of Rhode Island, and the brand new commissioner of education. This is going to be a big week. We have the commissioner reportedly going to the state board tomorrow to lay out her takeover plan. She has proffered it because they have to by state law. She's suggested that they want to, because of open meetings notices, they have decided that they want to go the route of the Crowley Act, which on its face is like moving the Titanic. I don't know how fast they think the Titanic goes or whether they can turn this into a speedboat, but they're going to have to, or this whole thing is going to be a farce. We shall dig into it and get the school board chairman's perspective on this momentarily. In the meantime, welcome aboard on this Monday. It's still humid, but it's a lot better than the weekend was, no doubt about it. What an anomaly that whole Saturday, Sunday thing was. I have to follow up on something. Here was a headline that we ran last week and kind of chuckled with Tim White about it. Tim White, in the Target 12 investigation, learned that Allen Fung's campaign had been infiltrated with a $15,000 fraudulent check being cashed in the state of New York. And I had joked with Tim last week that whilst I'm sure the bank is covering it and doing all the right things, that something tells me that this could just be I don't know, kind of a Fung thing. Well, listen, when I'm most likely wrong, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that, because this popped up on Friday. Nellie Gorbea's account is hit for the same amount of dough, 15 grand. She's our Secretary of State. So if we now have some kind of systemic fraud problem with political campaigns, I must, even though I said nothing specific, I must suggest to the Fung campaign that I may have reached too far, and we will see how far this reaches. I don't know what kind of system we have that allows for people to get into political campaigns, but we got to tighten that one up, don't you think? Here's a headline from Friday that kind of ruled the educational conversation. She proposed it, and the mayor called a press conference to get in front of it.
Island Education Commissioner Angelica Infante Green asking the State Council on Elementary and Secondary Education to give her the authority to take control of Providence schools under a 1997 law that lets the state reconstitute underperforming schools and potentially control the budget, programs, and personnel. The decision coming after weeks of public forums in the wake of the Johns Hopkins report that said Providence schools lacked learning and were in poor condition. In a statement, Infante Green said, "It is time for drastic action. I will spare no effort to collaborate with partners who share my singular focus, delivering a world-class education to the students who attend Providence schools."
This is not about who controls it. This is not about who makes decisions.
Mayor Jorge Elorza says he's willing to cede control because he says the Crowley Act allows the state to take actions he currently can't.
Our ability to hire qualified teachers fast enough, the ability to move resources fast enough without overlapping layers of bureaucracy.
At the end of the news conference, an emotional plea to Elorza from Hope High School teacher Betsy Taylor.
Nothing is being done that's different. It's a lot of talk.
I'll be the first to admit and agree with you, it is not okay.
Taylor telling us she teaches 11th grade ESL and is frustrated.
Our hands are tied when we get here. We're not given the resources to do what we know is best for our students.
I don't know. Emotion is one thing, you know, losing your wits is another. We'll see. Of course, the hug from the mayor. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
The notion that the journalistic reporting on this thing has tilted in this direction. The governor is going to do all she can to make sure this thing is fixed. The commissioner is going to bring us another plan. And Jorge Elorza, the mayor, concedes that this is not about control. It's all bunk. This mayor called a press conference on Friday so that he could keep an edge. Your school committee went ahead and, along with him, nominated a brand new interim superintendent. I learned that the commissioner wasn't even aware of the hire. And he has more or less suggested to the commissioner, she said in public, that he will take care of the building triage, meaning the squalor that has been reflected in the big report from Johns Hopkins. And he went ahead and did the interim commissioner thing. So this notion that he doesn't care who controls this thing is a lot of hooey, in my humble judgment. Do you agree?
You know, I think that a lot of mayors would not have walked down this path. My perspective on all this is, I don't care who controls it. All I know is the way we're set up now, we can't fix it. We can't fix it on ourselves. We can't fix it simply by the mayor, simply by the board. We have to try something new and something truly different. I went to that press conference on, I guess, Friday afternoon, or Friday morning rather. And the reason I went was, I don't care who controls it. I'm trying to get the message out to the teachers and the principals and the parents who come to our meetings and say, here's all the reasons why we can't do what we want to do. And what they need to see is this is the opportunity to tear down all those barriers and tear down all those obstacles. And the most important thing is the current structure has to get out of the way as much as possible. And if that means
Or completely.
Yeah, well, and so that's what I've said is, you know, as a result of our conversation last week, the Commissioner's Office has reached out to me and to the Vice President of our board and realized that maybe we should talk a little more directly. And so now we have sort of bi-weekly
Tell me about
meetings.
that. She picked in on a radio interview?
Well, it
or
was
what
after,
happened?
I think you and I talked on the radio about the hiring of Fran Gallo. And, you know, we were not in direct communication. And I think when you're not in direct communication, you know, the school board is essentially a volunteer part-time job. I can't be running around figuring out, did you talk to you and did you talk to so-and-so? I have a school department that I still have to run. I do not have a superintendent. And we have the perfect candidate and paradigm for a superintendent, which is a retired former superintendent who, whether she's here for a year or 30 days, doesn't make any difference to her. She's just ready to help. And so what I think the state has realized is not a good sense of what the school board does, not a sense of what the school board is obligated to do by law. And as you're setting up this new system, someone has to replace what we do. Because one thing that they've said to us is, well, we don't want the school board to go away. And that's usually in response to my contention that, you know, maybe it's just time that it should go away. And I'm okay with that if that's the case. But they want us to be around, and, you know, we want to be around to the extent we can help. If we can't help, you know, we don't need the title, we don't need the notoriety, we'll get out of the way. But what I view our job as right now is I have to help the commissioner, the governor, the mayor, whoever's in the room, understand how we work, understand what our challenges are, understand what we would do with a magic wand, and help them build a new system that's going to be in place for, I would imagine, 2 to 3 years as they try to unwind this problem.
All right. As I said to you on the radio, and I'll say it again, I note the humility that you bring to this conversation. It is rare when public officials do so. So, you know, as a taxpayer, I'm going to thank you for that, because it's not often that turf management isn't the first priority of those who stand on the turf. That you're suggesting that whatever's good for the city is what you want to do. I don't know you well. I've known of you for a while, but don't know you well. But I detect a level of significant sincerity in that response, which ought to be a relief for a lot of people in town. Because I'll leave this segment here with this question to you and your answer. That is not the tack the mayor is taking. Don't you agree? The mayor is trying. Now listen, I understand he's the duly elected mayor of the city. Let's not forget that he's elected to run the city, and that the system is set up that the mayor runs the school system via the work that the appointees on the school committee, not elected but appointed members of the school committee, bring to the table. But he's not letting go of the grip.
Well, as I understand what, you know, it's funny because the details of all this are really still being worked out in the public's eye, so to speak. With every day there's something new. But I will say this, my opinion now is not where my opinion started. And the mayor was far more interested in walking down this path of partnership with the state than I was, mostly because I've been here for 8 years and am somewhat jaded by the conversations or lack thereof that I've had with the state previously. I think this commissioner is different. I think this idea is not, my fear was we're just going to do what Central Falls did all over again, and I don't think that's the
That's a
ideal
different
way.
answer to the question. I got a break, so when we come back, we'll rephrase the question, we'll get the answer, and then we'll get the perspective. Stay with us. That is Fran Gallo, the new interim superintendent. Let me remind you again the commissioner's perspective on all of this. She was pretty frank about the performance, or lack thereof, and the numbers, if we could roll that.
We've been compared to districts and cities that have more poverty, and they're doing better than we are. I think when we talk about numbers, we forget that we're talking about kids. When I hear that only 10% of the kids are at grade level for math, that's the wrong message. What we need to hear and say is that 90% can't. I mean, really? Really? Those are kids.
Right. So we'll get to that in a moment. But here's my point. I am not looking to hang anybody here. I didn't wake up in the morning months ago and said, what can we do to put Jorge Elorza in the ringer? But the thing, listen, you're his appointee. How long have you been chair of the school committee now?
I think I've been chair for 3 years.
Okay. Lawyer by trade, hardworking guy. Let's just lay it out here. This commissioner is going to activate the Crowley Act. I'm guessing the board is going to go along with her. But there's a big space between what the Crowley Act does on paper and what really is needed to be done here. And they may have some kind of interest in accelerating the Crowley Act's processes, that they hit it at the back end rather than they hit it at the front end. How they argue that legally is beyond me. I believe that the commissioner should have petitioned the governor for a special session of the legislature to bring to bear whatever new language in the Crowley Act is necessary to make that statute stick and or to create a new one. They have chosen not to do that, so they're running in mud as far as I'm concerned. And I think they're running in mud in large part because this mayor is doing what he needs to do to keep his hand on this wheel, namely by suggesting he's going to be responsible for the triage of these buildings, and I see no triage plan. We'll get to that. Secondly, this hiring of Fran Gallo, or this nomination of Fran Gallo. What was the genesis of that, by the way?
Fran Gallo?
Yeah. As the interim superintendent.
So I had kind of put it out there to people that I would like to see Fran Gallo apply for the interim position, especially not
She's got a
only
great resume.
her resume, her track record. Union folks will say, well, we don't like Fran Gallo, but union folks from Providence worked well with Fran Gallo. And so I just thought she fit the mold of what we needed, because in those interviews, if someone said, well, how long am I coming into the job? I would look at them candidly and say, I don't know. You could be here a year, you could be here till the fall. I don't know. But I need someone to open schools. I need someone who can.
Well, you
be
had an
helpful in
acting
this
superintendent
process.
in Deborah Smith, so why was that not enough in the middle
So,
of this whole
sure.
crazy period of time when you knew the commissioner was going to take charge anyway?
We were never told not to hire an interim superintendent. We made Dottie Smith acting in the middle of the process because we couldn't finish it fast enough before Chris Marr left and we could hire somebody else. It was never our intention for Dottie to be the acting superintendent beyond a few weeks or a month or so. We had already started down that path. And you brought up the legal side. I've not been a part of the legal analysis here. Obviously I hope they can make it work to the fullest extent they can. But in the event that there's some sort of injunctive relief, something that puts gum on this train and stops it, and we have to continue to function as the existing structure, I have to be set up that we can continue to do that and to take advantage of.
Predicting that there'll be an effort to create some legal morass here, injunctive relief? Who would that come from? Either the union or the mayor himself, seems to me.
Well, I don't think the city would walk down the path. I don't think we'd be doing this if there wasn't good communication, not perfect communication, but at least an understanding of what the goal is between the state and the mayor.
Be doing what?
going down this path with the Crowley Act. I don't think you would see the state
But as
simply
my father used to
imposing
say, when I say, hey, Dad, we ought to do something. What is this we blank? What is this we blank?
I think-
you guys are sitting ducks right now. The
I was
Commissioner
brought
of
into this-
Education, the Commissioner of Education is the alleged new boss. You guys will do what you should do based on what she's going to bring to the table. The idea that the Providence players have been kind of mini architects of this is a joke, Mr. Chairman.
Well, again, I wasn't really brought into these discussions other than the last 2 weeks or so in detail. But I will tell you that they have been talking about how this would work for quite some time. And it became public, I think, faster than anybody else intended it to when Ken Wagner, on his way out the door, the former commissioner, said to Dan McGowan when he was at WPRI, oh, they're going to come take over the schools. And so now you've had this conversation, which I think people would have thought through sort of in a conference room somewhere, either in the State House or the Department of Education, that's become very public. So my involvement in this has been very much a quasi-partnership. Granted, they could do whatever they want to do, and I'm fine with that. But I'll tell you where there won't be a legal challenge will not come from the school board.
Got
and as of right now,
Or the city council, I'm guessing, who I think is relieved that the school committee's had a disposition of humility in this whole situation, and I'm guessing the council will be along for that same kind of ride. It is the mayor who, again, duly elected, no doubt, who's trying to hold on to this sucker. Look, you don't take a general to come in and say, listen, you need to take over the troops, and suggest that prior leadership hangs around. If there's continuity necessary, you bring that from the middle operational ground. You don't bring it from this level. If this thing is going to work, it's going to be, guess what? You guys had your chance. Move aside. We'll get back to you when you're back in charge. That's what's got to be done here. So this idea that the mayor is still holding on to some of the triage. By the way, on the triage, meaning the 6 weeks now you got left to get the buildings in humanitarian quality shape, meaning that you all feel good enough to be able to let the kids go back to school. What's the status on that? You got any information on that?
yes. So
Because the mayor's thrown this $20 million fund around, which was already in play with a list of projects that were going on that had really nothing to do intersecting with the actual rats and lead and asbestos and other types of squalor that reflect in the Johns Hopkins report. So what's going on?
So what I did was
And don't tell me you're going to ask the Latino and black community to go paint their buildings, which is as racist a thing I've ever heard in my life, coming from, by the way, Hispanic leadership. In North Kingstown, you think they're going to go paint the buildings that they pay taxpayer dollars for? I don't think so. This is not Habitat for Humanity.
By the way, the organization that paints the buildings will fight their effort to paint the buildings because it's their work. So that's what we've typically tackled when we have community members who want to paint their schools.
Right.
But anyway, so I took what, as I say, if you were surprised by the Johns Hopkins report, you just haven't been following what we've been dealing with. The one area that did surprise me was not that our buildings are in terrible condition. We've advocated on that since the day I got there, and they've been like that since I walked in the buildings in 1991. What did surprise me were complaints that I'd not heard before. All you got to do is walk in a school building, and they will all come to you, whether it's principals, teachers, teachers' assistants, or the kids will come to you and complain about the building. No one had ever complained to me about raw sewage. No one had ever complained that they have asbestos falling on them. So I reached out to our operations people and say, listen, I need to understand what the hell we're doing about this, and because these are conditions you just can't exist. What came back to me was most of them in that report were anecdotal reports, and I will tell you that much of the Johns Hopkins report is anecdotal stuff. So I've asked specifically on the report of asbestos falling on. It is not true. It is not happening. I asked specifically about the raw sewage, which was at a school where the kitchen was above the classroom and the dishwasher was leaking, and it was not sewage. It was just the usual problems that we have of water leaking in schools. I don't say any of that to make excuses for this. The schools are in a deplorable nature, and we've advocated.
You're going to tell me there's no rats and mice too?
So we get rat. I've never had a rat complaint. I've had a lot of mice complaints, and I think what we've done on that front is we have the pest control that goes on. We've doubled that effort. We have them in all the buildings right now, making sure that all of the necessary precautions
Let me
are
be
taking
clear.
place.
Let me see if I'm hearing this clearly. You're telling me that which I perceive, and no doubt have been banging the drum on here for the last few weeks, is a false narrative?
They are either old allegations, or they are allegations that, you know, for instance, was the roof leaking? Yes. Was it raw sewage? I'm told no. Now, I'm not there, but I asked about it because I certainly want it dealt with if it's something that's ongoing. And I was told that it was from a couple of years ago, and they've repaired that issue.
And bottled water being brought into some schools because the water is not usable is also a false narrative?
I've had a lot of concerns. So I have an 8-month-old, and, you know, my wife yells at me when I make the bottle with tap water in Providence. So I've had concerns about that previously. You know, what is the quality of the water that we're doing throughout the city of Providence with what comes in from the water department? But I don't have any data from the people who are responsible for the health and safety of the children that report back
So
to us
let me
to
be clear
suggest
one
that
more
that is
time, make sure I'm
happening.
hearing this correctly. This Johns Hopkins report that cites this kind of squalor, rats, asbestos, lead in the water, rodents in general, is largely anecdotal, meaning it is largely hyperbole, which means it's not something that needs to be triaged in the next 6 weeks. Is that the firm stand of the school committee chair?
That is my understanding of it, but I don't believe you just sit back on your heels. I mean, you got to have the pest control people out there. Don't forget, our schools are producing as much food as restaurants, so you have to be on top of
There
those
is no
issues.
immediate need for a triage plan to make the schools ready for human habitation.
Aside from the work that, as you know, was already planned, I'm told everything is under control. Now, I'm not going to just go away. You got 6 weeks to stay on top of it. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to speak. I'm meeting with all of the building principals the 31st. We're going to talk directly to them and say, look, operations say these issues are taken care of. What are you telling us? And we'll keep working on it. But I don't defend it, Dan. The buildings. I
don't know what it
offer
is.
this as a defense.
I'm not
but
sure what it is.
It's not ideal.
You just redefined what it is. We'll have the final word when we come back. All right, so final thought here. What are your expectations of what's going to happen tomorrow and in the short term? We only have 30 seconds.
Sure. I mean, I think the commissioner obviously has already announced her intentions. I think you're going to hear an announcement that will drastically change the governance structure in Providence, or at least the intent to go down that road. And, you know, what we have is, I would expect that as we get into the school year, that new governance model will take more and more of the responsibilities on in the day-to-day operations. I don't know at the end of the day what the role of the school board will be, if there is a role. But whatever we can do is to help, we're going to do.
All right, thank you for your time. We'll keep the dialogue moving. Nick Hemans, the chair of the school committee. Final word and a preview of tomorrow night's show next. Let me tell you something. If all of this hearsay and anecdotal stuff about the conditions of the schools is really about a whole hullabaloo about nothing in terms of emergency and a squalor that way, Nick Hemans, the school committee chair, has kind of said that for the first time. That the mayor hasn't been able to control that narrative is another example as to his incompetence and why his leadership has failed. Congressman Cicilline tomorrow. Good night.